for a What's Up with Nora? Ooh, what's up with that? Ooh, what's up with Nora? Ooh, what's up with that?
No. Well.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in once again. This is What's Up with Nora. I'm your host, Nora Ames. Today, we are diving into the deep, dark crevices of what holds a lot of people in cults. Okay. And this is something that people don't like the word slavery so much, I find. And I agree with that because it has definite historical meaning and connotations, and it should be held in reverence, right? So when someone is sold or contracted into work of that type, it is more commonly known as indentured servitude, which is a fancy way for saying slave. And let's talk about that. Let's talk about the Scientology contracts. Let's break it down and dive into this world of indentured servitude, America's history in it, and where Scientology falls along that spectrum. So here we go. First thing that we're going to go over here is in California, there was a ballot on the measure last year to end indentured servitudes in the prisons, in particular. Now, as you may or may not know, prisoners, that's California State Assembly member Lori Wilson. She was leading the charge on this. So in California, prisoners are used for all kinds of labor, very specifically to fight fires when they are happening, and they put them, into this situation. So elected leaders, activists, and experts gathered online February 9th, this is last year, for a discussion on the movement to abolish indentured servitude from the California Constitution. The 13th Amendment of the Constitution abolished slavery and involuntary servitude in 1865, except as punishment for a crime. So indentured servitude, okay, involuntary servitude, indentured servitude, slavery, not legal in California. Let's keep that in mind. Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Since then, it's led to the United States having the world's largest population of incarcerated citizens. Well, congrats, America. We're good at that. The U.S. prison population was 1,230,100 on December 21st, 2022, a 2% increase from 2021. And 32% of persons sentenced to prison were Black, while 31% were white. Okay, so it's almost, equal in that measure. White people make up more than 75% of the U.S. population, while Black people only make up 14%. So it's weird that they're 32% of the prison population. Yeah, that's curious. Okay. So this is a graphic showing how many people are locked up in the state prisons. The End Slavery in California Act did not pass. It didn't pass. They didn't pass it. Okay. And let's go through the history here. So indentured labor, let's just figure out where we're coming from here, is a form of contract labor in which laborers enter into an official agreement with their employer certifying that they will work for the employer either for a fixed length of time or until a debt has been paid. The debt is usually understood to include the costs that the employer charges the worker for transport from their home location, as well as for housing and food. It may also include costs associated with the apprenticeship or other training that is ostensibly provided by the employer. Often indentured workers make agreements unwillingly or unknowingly and are exploited by their employers. Historically, indentured labor was sometimes imposed on criminals who agreed to servitude in exchange for a commutation of their sentence. Okay. This is the wiki article on that. It's a form of labor in which a person is contracted to work without a salary for a specific number of years. The contract, called an indenture, may be entered voluntary for a prepaid lump sum as payment for some good or service, for example, travel, purported eventual compensation, or a debt repayment. An indenture, the person doing that, may also be imposed involuntarily as judicial punishment. The practice has been compared to the similar institution of slavery, although there are differences. Historically, in apprenticeship, an apprentice worked with no pay for a master tradesman to learn the trade. Okay. This was often for a fixed length of time, usually 7 years or less. Apprenticeship was not the same as indentureship, although many apprentices were tricked into falling into debt and thus having to indenture themselves for years more to pay off such sums. Like any loan, an indenture could be sold. So this actual person who's working for whatever reason for this person, most masters had to depend on middlemen or ship's masters to recruit and transport the workers. So indentureships were commonly sold by such men to planters or others upon the ship's arrival, much like slave auctions. Like slaves, their prices went up or down depending on supply and demand. When the indentured loan was paid off, the worker was free, but not always in good health or of sound body. Sometimes they might be given a plot of land or a small sum to buy it, but the land was usually poor. Okay. So until the late 18th century, indentured servitude was common in British America. So we didn't just have the slaves being imported here. We had this other form of, diet slavery here. It was often a way for Europeans to migrate to the American colonies. It's a 3-month voyage, guys, by ship, which was expensive. So if you couldn't pay for that, right, you would just get some dude and you would say, okay, I'm going to come work for you for a year or 5 years to pay off this debt, right? Whatever. However, the system was used to exploit many of them, as well as Asians, mostly from India and China, who wanted to migrate to the New World. These Asian people were used mainly to construct roads and railway systems. The reasons why we have our railroad across America is because of those indentured Asians, both Indian and Chinese. They built the railroad system. And the Irish and the Italians, who were also indentured, who were not allowed to just be regular people because they weren't considered white. Okay. One economist has suggested that indentured servitude was an economic arrangement designed to iron out imperfections in the capital market. Isn't that nice? Okay. So this, again, was also done to Native Americans in California, right? Enslaving indigenous people in one form or another began in colonial America. It is now known in what is now known as California. Enslavement began with the Franciscan missions. If you've ever lived in California like I did as a child, you went to one or multiple of these missions to go see how California was colonized by the Catholic Church. Okay. It continued in the form of legislated indentured servitude, even when California entered the Union as a free state. Okay, it was free for white people. Recent scholarship, along with increasingly digitized primary source documents online, provides accessible, compelling evidence that indigenous slavery is a central component of U.S. and Native American history. Nevertheless, students, teachers, and general public know little to nothing about the subject. This is very true. There's no reason that this aspect of Native American history should be absent from colonial U.S. and California education curricula. Okay, so let me keep going here. More. Okay, this is a whole PBS series that they did about it. Okay. Indentured servants first arrived in America in the decade following the settlement of Jamestown, Virginia, by the Virginia Company. Okay, in 1607. The idea of indentured servitude was born of a need for what? Cheap labor. Okay. The earliest settlers realized that they had lots of land to care for. That is so much space, but no one to do it because they didn't have enough kids. Right? So they're like, we got to bring in some peoples. With passage to the colonies, expensive for all but the wealthy, the Virginia Company developed the system of indentured servitude to attract workers. Just come, it's just a couple years, whatevs, right? The timing of the Virginia colony was ideal. The 30 Years' War had left Europe's economy depressed, and many skilled and unskilled laborers were without work. A new life in the New World offered a glimmer of hope. This explains how 1/2 to 2/3 of the immigrants who came to the American colonies arrived as indentured servants. I really want this to sink in. This is what America was made on, guys. It wasn't on people just sail away, sail away, sail away, like coming to here to find a new life. They were bought and sold by the pound, literally. Okay. So let's go over some other definitions here. Okay. A religious order is a specific group within a larger religious tradition. Okay. That follows a particular way of life, vows, while a religion is a broader system of belief and practices. Okay. Religion encompasses a system of beliefs, practices, and rituals that relate to the divine or supernatural, often involving worship and a sense of community. Examples include Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Notice how they conveniently leave Scientology off of that. A religious order within a religion, the religious order is a community of people who live under religious vows and follow a specific way of life, often with a particular focus or charism. Example, service, prayer, education. The vows, religious orders often involve taking vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience through specific vows, and their interpretation can vary. The Catholic Church of religious orders include the Franciscans, Dominicans, Jesuits, and Benedictines. Benedictions. I don't know how to pronounce that. Pronunciation. Okay, distinction from religious congregations. Okay, in the Catholic Church, a religious order is distinguished from the congregation or simply congregation by the type of vows taken. Solemn vows for orders and simple vows for congregation, right? So for those of you who grew up in any form of Christianity, if you're part of the congregation, you're following the Bible, right? You're following the basic edicts, the 10 Commandments, that kind of thing. But the people in the order, the priests, the nuns, that sort of thing, they have a much stricter way of life, right? Okay. So in the Wikipedia, it also says a religious order is a subgroup within a larger group, confessional community with a distinctive high religiosity lifestyle and clear membership. Religious orders often trace their lineage from revered teachers, venerate their founders, and have a document describing their lifestyle called a rule of life. Such orders exist in many of the world's religions. And then it breaks down like all these different ones. And again, no Scientology in there. Okay. So while indentured servitude existed within religious orders and was used to finance institutions like Georgetown University, it's important to note that indentured servitude, while a form of labor, differs from slavery, where individuals are treated as property and denied fundamental rights. That last sentence is really important. Slavery, where individuals are treated as property and denied fundamental rights. Okay. So what tax-free benefits can nonprofit give volunteers? Because we've heard before that Scientology is calling its labor force volunteers, that they are not, employees. They are not slaves. But let's see what the law says about that. So nonprofits often look to ways to reward their volunteers for services. There's no tax problem when a volunteer is given rewards of nominal value, such as free food and drink at a thank you party, a certificate of appreciation. However, more substantial rewards could result in taxable income to the volunteers. For example, an award of money or a valuable gift would be taxable. That is, the volunteer would have to add the amount to their income for the year and pay income tax on it. Okay. There are some types of rewards that are tax-free. These are the type of tax-free fringe benefits that employers can give their employees. Most volunteers at nonprofits qualify as employees for tax purposes because they almost always work under someone else's supervision or direction. So they can get these fringe benefits tax-free just like an employee, and these include the following things: discounts on goods and services, okay? Parking and other transportation benefits, meals and lodging on premises, all right? No additional cost services, education benefits, insurance coverage, which Scientology does not. There's no insurance. Other benefits to nonprofit volunteers are taxable. Other than what's listed above, any cash, discount, service, or benefit that a volunteer receives must be treated as taxable income and reported to the IRS, because benefits other than cash are valued according to their fair market and then treated the same as taxable cash income. To encourage volunteers, this is an example, during a fundraising drive, a nonprofit offers a Hawaiian vacation to the volunteer who raises the most money. The fair market value of the vacation is taxable income. The vacation costs $2,000. So this is the amount that the nonprofit must report to the IRS, and the winning volunteer must add to their taxable income for the year. If a volunteer is classified as an employee for tax purposes, which is usually the case, except for directors, you need to pay attention to employee withholding requirements. If the volunteer is paid over a minimum amount during a pay period, okay, there's a very distinct amount that the IRS allows you to pay out to people. I don't need any of that. All right. Is there a maximum volunteer stipend in California? This is a great question. This attorney says, "Hi, and thank you for using Just Answer. My name is blank." This is Attorney Z. "I will be the lawyer assisting you with your question. Just know, just a general disclaimer that this conversation and informational purposes, and I'm not your lawyer. The information discussed is for general use only, and only a local lawyer would be necessary to take any legal action and or preserve any of your rights. Since my answers are not considered legal advice, it's always recommended that you consult with a local attorney for specific legal information for your situation." Okay. There is no legal maximum volunteer stipend in California. However, the U.S. Department of Labor considers volunteer to be someone who performs hours of service for religious, charitable, or similar nonprofit organizations without promise, expectation, or receipt of compensation. If a nonprofit pays volunteer regular and significant amounts, whether described as wages, barters, stipends, allowances, or something else, it may make their volunteer workers look more like employees, even if the payments amount to less than minimum wage. The Department of Labor does not provide specific guidance that constitutes regular and significant amount. Isn't that fun? Of money, but it has generally advised nonprofits to keep stipends below 20% of what they would pay a full-time employee for the same services. Nonprofits should also be careful not to structure stipends in a way that creates expectation of payment. Like weekly pay? For example, stipends should not be tied to productivity or performance. Oh, like it is in the C organization. If you're down stat, you don't get your pay. If you don't show up, you don't get your pay. If the whole organization statistics look like this, then nobody gets paid. And they should not be paid on a regular basis. Though you're guaranteed, at least when I was there, a weekly pay of $50. California has a minimum wage law that requires employers to pay a minimum wage to employees. If a stipend is being offered to a volunteer and it is deemed that the volunteer should be classified as an employee under California labor laws, which can be a complex determination, then they would generally be entitled to at least the minimum wage. However, the classification of volunteers versus employees can be legally complicated and often depends on the specific circumstances and the nature of work being performed. Receiving a stipend in any form of compensation, even as a volunteer, can have tax implications. It's essential for individuals to understand their tax obligations and consult with a tax professional if they receive any form of stipend reimbursement. Okay, the reason why I read this out is that, as you know, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I was in the indentured servitude wing of the religion known as Scientology, specifically at the entity known as the Church of Scientology Celebrity Center International that resides at 5930 Franklin Avenue in Hollywood, California. All right. When I signed up, I only signed the billion-year contract, and we're going to go over all the contracts here in a second. And it was expected and told to me during my recruitment process that I would be paid $50 per week. Period. Once you sign that billion-year contract and you get into the nitty-gritty, you find out that is not the case. That $50 per week has many quid pro quos and provisos that you are not told up front. Okay? So let's go over, let me pull that up here. The very not legal billion-year contract that I signed back in the day. And they're still having, the ecclesiastical branch with the fake space navy of Scientology sign these. Okay. And this is an example of the billion-year contract. Okay. Normally the laurel leaves, okay, and the star are gold. Sea organization is in gold, embossed, right? Sometimes the seahorses are also gold. Okay. So contract of employment. You write your name in there. Do hereby agree to enter into employment, okay, with the Sea organization, and being of sound mind, do fully realize and agree to abide by its purpose, which is to get ethics in on the planet and the universe. It's like you gotta read it with a correct emphasis. And fully and without reservation subscribe to the discipline, mores, and conditions of this group and pledge to abide by them. Therefore, I contract myself to the Sea organization for the next billion years. Okay, and then you sign and date it. There, two witnesses sign it, and then you sign it again. Have the Sea Org recruiter perform the Sea Org swearing in ceremony. You literally swear an oath, and then you sign again. Okay. Now, notice that it says enter into employment. That is what you're signing. Now, people say, oh, it's a symbolic thing. Obviously, you can't sign a legal contract for 1 billion years, but you are pledging in this contract. It says, what does it say at the top? Contract of employment. Okay? You're designating yourself an employee here of the fake space navy. Okay? Like you can't say everybody's a volunteer when you make them sign a contract of employment. I'm sorry. That's not just my definition. That's literally what that means. Okay? So we're going to go over these other contracts here because yep. Now, then they got savvy because people like me were like talking about this and breaking it down. Okay. And let's see what they're saying now, because now they're getting fancy and trying to change the wording. So now people have to sign several documents, not just one document. They also have them sign the 1 billion years contract of employment because you still have to pledge that. But now it says Church of Scientology application, declaration, and general release, declaration of religious commitment, and application for membership in a Scientology religious order, and for active participation on church staff. Okay, so now they're being very distinct. They're calling themselves a religious order, which we talked about earlier. Okay, so your full name, of your address, apply for membership in a Scientology religious order, for active participation as a staff member within the Church of Scientology, and then fill in the blank. Los Angeles Day is a separate entity. Los Angeles Foundation, separate entity. American Saint Hill Organization Day Foundation. Those are two separate entities. Church, Celebrity Center International, separate entity. Advanced Organization Los Angeles, separate entity. Okay, these are all individual corporations. That's why you have to list the specific one and put the address of that church. Hereinafter referred to as the church. For a period of 5, you're going to circle one of these, or 5 years or 2.5 years. Acceptance of my application is based on the following information. If a minor, but they don't employ kids anymore, right? If a minor, I have obtained the consent of my parents or guardian to the commitment and participation herein described for the Church of Scientology, which is consent indicated beneath my signature. Right there, number 1, if you're a minor. I have never been convicted of the commission of any criminal felony under the laws of any jurisdiction, so you can't be a criminal. I have no institutional history of psychosis. Okay, so don't be cuckoo. I have no electric, insulin, or other shock or psychiatric brain operation history. I'm not an active drug pusher. You can't say drug dealer, drug pusher. I've never sued the church or any Scientology organization or made complaint to any governmental authority with respect to the church, any member of the church, or any Scientology organization. I am not a blown staff member or blown Sea Org member. Blown in that case meaning AWOL, absent without leave. Okay. That is, I have never, without authorization in accordance with church policies, departed from any staff position within any Scientology organization or broken my vow of service as a member of the Sea organization, a religious order of the Church of Scientology. Or I have in the past blown as described above, but have since recanted and been given forgiveness and accepted back into the Scientology religion after having made proper restitution. I'm not related to or connected to any intelligence with any intelligence agency, either by past history or immediate familial connection. So for all you guys who have family members in any of the alphabets of the government, you cannot join. I do not have a parent or guardian who's antagonistic. He's an antagonist of the Scientology religion or of any organization devoted to Scientology applied religious philosophy. So you would have to sign this even if you were starting work at, like, let's say, the Way to Happiness Foundation or the Hollywood Education and Literacy Project or any one of the Scientology schools you decided to work for. You're signing this, okay? Not just for people who are joining the Sea organization or working at the Portland org or something like that. This is what everybody signs in order to have employment at a Narconon anywhere, okay? I'm not seeking a staff position to obtain material for dissemination to the public via press, radio, television, motion picture, or other media. I do not seek to obtain for any other organization, seek to obtain data for any other organization or to disrupt the church organization. I do not have personal debts of a magnitude such that efforts to satisfy them would immediately disrupt or cause me to pull back from my commitment to the church. So you can't have any debts of any kind because you're not being paid enough to pay your regular credit card bill, even your car insurance, nothing like that. You can't have anything, a car payment, you would never afford it. So you have to sell your car. You have to get rid of everything. You become, you don't exist anymore, essentially. Okay. I do not have any mental institution history, by which is meant voluntary or involuntary stay in a mental institution and knowingly or unknowingly receiving treatment therein. Any treatment, any treatment, guys. I have no prior service in a high security section of the government or armed forces. My spouse has no objections to my working for the church. I am not currently on drugs. I have seen the film Orientation, and I'm now informed and aware that Scientology is a religion. Its teachings are religious and its claims are religious in nature. I further understand that if I desire to participate in Scientology services, I do so being fully aware that these are religious services and that I am participating in them under the ecclesiastical principles of the Scientology religion. So right there, you're hypnotizing yourself to say Scientology is a religion, it's a religion, it's a religion, right? I attest that I've been given I read Scientology Policy Directive 13 March 1996, statements by staff members in Scientology Policy Directive 13 March 1996, return of donations. Exception to any of the above can be made only after an applicant has petitioned a senior officer of the church and received unconditional acceptance. Such written approval must be presented to an HCO, Hubbard Communications Office, before signing the declaration. I understand and agree that by this declaration, I am declaring a religious commitment to spiritual awareness, to the Scientology religion, and to create a better world in accordance with this declaration. Please initial. Please clap. I further understand that all church staff members, including myself, are members of a religious order, that they serve pursuant to their religious obligations and not in contemplation of receiving any compensation whatsoever. And in doing so, that they are forsaking all commercial and financial motivation. Please initial. Each considers himself or herself a volunteer to create a better world and understanding that he, she is not an employee, i.e., is not entitled to receive secular benefits such as minimum wage or overtime compensation. Please initial. I acknowledge that this declaration binds me to follow the ecclesiastical, moral, and ethical policies, rules, and norms and practices of Scientology religious philosophy as a member of a religious order, and to follow the administrative policies and procedures of the church. I agree to maintain the confidentiality of all communications, whether written or oral, all documents, all files, all mailing lists, and all other material not commonly offered to the public for sale or use collectively materials which may come into my knowledge or possession in the course of my service as a staff member of the church or of any other Scientology organization. In other words, without limiting the generality of the foregoing, I agree not to remove materials from the premises where I perform services as a staff member and not to disclose contents or give out copies of materials coming into my possession except in the ordinary course of performing my duties as a staff member pursuant to church policy. Upon conclusion of my service as a staff member, I agree to return all materials given to me in the course of my service and not to disclose any information to anyone without prior written consent of the church. Okay, so the materials given to you, they are going to include knowledge reports that you wrote that were written on you, any, RPF assignments that are in writing, all these things that the church constantly puts in writing, you are not allowed to keep and take off the premises, even if they were solely about you. Even if it's a commendation, you got an award, you're not allowed to take that off, take that out with you. Okay, you're not allowed to do that. Okay, so yeah. I agree that any claim, dispute, or controversy arising out of this declaration and application for relating to any Scientology or Dianetic services or activities that I engage in shall be first submitted in writing to the International Justice Chief, who shall decide the matter in accordance with the religious doctrines of the Church of Scientology, including Scientology justice procedures, which is covered in various documents. It's also covered in the Scientology Introduction to Ethics book. And there's various courses based on that book and other policies, okay? There's a whole, like, volume 1 of the Hubbard Communications Office volumes is basically like everything about that. I understand that in the event I'm unhappy with the decision of the International Justice Chief, that I may have recourse to other ecclesiastical justice procedures described in the policy of the church. That means you can go to the chaplain and bitch. But you cannot avail yourself of outside. Okay? In no event shall such claim or controversy be submitted to a court for judicial determination, as the parties understand that such matters are religious in nature. To a court. You're pledging in this document that you will never go to a court of law. Seek outside your constitutional rights. You're signing away your constitutional rights. I understand and agree that my participation as a staff member of the church shall be based upon the following: service hours and extra service. The day organization serves the weekdays. The foundation serves evenings and weekends. Staff are expected to study in their off-duty hours and to assist with additional duties. Holidays. 2 service weeks per year after 1 year's continuous active service for Class 5 org staff, and 3 weeks per continuous active years for 3 weeks of vacation. Guys, in the total 8 years that I was in the Sea Org, almost 3 of which being on the RPF, the time off that I took was less than 10 whole days. I take that back. Well, let's be generous. Let's say it was 15 days total out of 5 years that I took off. Does that seem right? 3 weeks you're supposed to get? You're supposed to be able to get a day off every other week if you have good statistics. Did nobody ever get that? Sick leave. I'm sorry. Forgive my chuckle. Sick leave. 2 days, non-accumulative, every full calendar month upon presentation of a doctor's certificate. Oh, how are you getting to that doctor? Who's the doctor? Sick leave? Guys, I didn't even get sick leave when I had a broken ass ankle. Sick leave? When I had kidney stones, I didn't get no sick leave. When I had 23 cysts on my right ovary and 15 on my left, I didn't get no sick leave. Sick leave. There's no crying in baseball. Pension. The church doesn't provide a pension or any other retirement program. No. Furnishing of necessaries. Not even necessities, necessaries. Church staff members serve pursuant to their personal religious commitment and conviction rather than for monetary gain or other traditional commercial or financial motives or incentives. Nevertheless, the church will, pursuant to this covenant, furnish certain necessaries, including weekly nominal pocket money allowance. This is how they're trying to get away with it, right? So they're saying it's a weekly amount. Again, what did we say? Even with a religious order, what are you not supposed to do? Make it regular. Make a promise of regular pay, because then that turns that volunteer into a what? An employee. For certain staff positions, a room and board. That's the Sea Org members. The furnishing of these necessary items is not intended to be and is not compensation for services performed by the applicant. So they're trying to create a loophole in this regular payment that they're promising. Okay. But rather, it provides an opportunity for the church to establish an appropriate environment within which religious and spiritual awareness may receive the greatest prospect for enhancement, and in which matters constitute the sole reward. These what? Opportunity for church to establish appropriate environment within which religious and spiritual awareness may receive the greatest prospect for enhancement, and which such matters constitute the sole reward for services. The amount of weekly allowance may vary depending upon economic conditions generally prevailing within the church. So they notice they don't give you the amount of money. They used to tell you up front that it was $50 per week. So your pocket money could be 25 cents if your church that week didn't make enough money to fulfill all its obligations that it has to tithe upwards. You're the last. You're the last, okay? Staff are subject to existing policy, which is subject to amendment How can it be subject to amendment when the founder's dead and he is supposed to be the last word? That don't make no sense. Deletion and or addition without prior notice. I'm sorry, that's against policy. Staff members study and receive examination on their knowledge of policies, bulletins, and directives relating to their activities and upon their policies, bulletins, and directives as from time to time are requested. Staff may be dismissed in accordance with policy. Now, hang on a second. This first sentence here, that they are subject, the policies are subject to amendment, deletion, and or addition without prior notice. I'm sorry. That goes against technical degrades. It's a bulletin written by L. Ron Hubbard, the founder. Just saying that sentence is against that and is considered a high crime in Scientology. This contract, for those of you out there who are under the radar Scientologists, please do yourself a favor and read technical degrades. Read tech degrades right now, and you tell me in the comments if that section on policy is not in fact itself a technical degrade. Breach of covenant. If a staff member who receives services from no cost up to and including 50% of cost to the public, breaks his agreement either by leaving staff before completing his commitment. Okay, so if you contract yourself for 2.5 years, the way I'm reading that, I've completed my commitment. Even if I sign the billion-year contract and I say, you know what, I don't want to sign another 2.5-year contract, I'm done. I should owe them how much money, kids? None. Or by violating his good standing as a Scientology staff member so that he's dismissed in accordance with policy, right? He or she shall remit forthwith to the church a penance for violation of this covenant in accordance with the ecclesiastical policy of the church. If such person is declared a freeloader, this provision is not intended to reflect traditional commercial bargains or concerns, but rather is intended as a manifestation of applicable ecclesiastical ethics. Now, please hold the phone, because there is no one who leaves indentured servitude inside of the fake Space Navy that does not get declared a freeloader. Because even though if they make you sign this legal contract for 5 or 2.5 years, if after that 5 or 2.5 years, you're automatically declared a degraded being and a freeloader, and you have to pay back everything, even though you completed this contract. Why? Because you didn't stay for the billion years, which means until death, and then you come back lifetime after lifetime, right? Ethical conduct. As members of a religious order, church staff members are expected to uphold a high degree of personal ethical conduct in accordance with church policy and doctrine. Church staff members are governed by the ethics policies of the church, which are designed to assist a person to become a more ethical, productive, happy being. Look how happy they all are. Look at all those Scientologists that we see on the protesting video. Just happy, shiny people. Entirety of covenant. The church shall not be obligated to honor any verbal promises or other terms or conditions specifically covered in this covenant. This covenant forms the entirety of the church's agreement with the church staff member and promises no specific counseling, training, posts, or other benefits to any church staff member. Now, again, this goes against policy. Every Sea Org member, per L. Ron Hubbard, is expected to become a Class 8, OT 8, also black belt, fully trained in all of the administrative policy, fully trained in all of the technical policy. That is what L. Ron Hubbard laid out as an edict for all Sea Org members. And so you are promised that road to freedom in exchange for your indentured servitude. No more. No more. Association with individuals in not good standing. Not in good standing. Uh-oh, hot dog. During my service as a staff member, I agree not to knowingly associate in any way with former parishioners of the church of any with the church or any other Scientology organization who are either no longer in good standing or have been expelled or have been declared. So right there, This one right here is the big one that they're enforcing right now. When you see people who are protesting and they're filming and you see the staff notice them and they turn and walk away, they have to do that under contractual obligation. Otherwise, they would be knowingly associating with a former parishioner or people who are not in good standing. They are commanded as such. All right, as consideration, so considerate, for being permitted by the church to become a member in a Scientology religious order. So happy that you're permitting me to do that. And become an active participant as a staff member within the church as provided in this application, declaration, and general release. I hereby agree that I, my heirs, distributees, guardians, legal representatives, and assigns will not make claim against, sue, attach the property of, or prosecute the church, any successor of L. Ron Hubbard Religious Technology Center and its principals, meaning David Miscavige, Church of Scientology International, and or any of its affiliated churches, missions, corporations, associations, partnerships, or organizations, and or their agents, servants, successors, heirs, executioners, and assigns, hereinafter collectively referred to as the releasees, for injury or damage resulting from the negligence or other acts, howsoever caused by any releasee or by any employee. Again, there's that nasty word employee, agent or contractor of the church, its affiliates, or other releasees, arising out of or in any way connected with my membership in the Scientology religious order, active participation on church staff, or association with the releasees. So if you become physically ill, terminally physically ill as a part of working, as an indentured servant, and you are now infirm, you cannot get any sort of compensation for that. Your family can't, nobody can. You are literally like Game of Thrones. You're becoming no one. You are no one. And you forever are saying that any member, any portion of the church is not liable for your problems. See, the great thing for me and other people who joined, who after hours of pressure and indoctrination unwillingly signed the billion-year contract and never once signed a covenant such as this, I am free to sue them for whatever I want. As long as it's legal, right? But what they're trying to do to Valerie Haney right now, as an example, is enforce these rules, which I am willing to bet money she never signed this bullshit on her, because it's their current rules. People who you see, young people walking around, they have signed this. They have signed this document. Okay. I hereby release and discharge all the releasees from all actions, claims, or demands I, my heirs, distributees, guardians, legal representatives, or assigns ever had, now have, or may hereafter have for injury or damage resulting from or any way connected with my membership in the Scientology religious order, active participation on church staff, or association with the releasees. So, like my friend who lost an eyeball, they're trying to say, too bad, so sad. Can't sue us. People have died. People have lost fingers. People have, we were exposed to asbestos. We were exposed to all kinds of shit, but I can't, nope. Oh, you have mesothelioma now? Fuck you. Too bad. I further agree to indemnify and save and hold harmless the releasees and each of them from any loss, inability, damage, or cost, including but not limited to attorney's fees they may incur whenever caused by the negligence of the, whether caused by the negligence of the releasees or otherwise as a result of my breach of any covenants contained herein, my breach of the fiduciary duties owed to the church and or the releasees, my activity within the church or my conduct in the community at large with regard to the church, and or the releasees whether or not such activity or conduct is pursuant to this application, declaration, and general release, and any statements made by me herein which are now false or which hereafter become false, and or my membership in the Scientology religious order, my active participation on church staff, or my association with releasees. I have carefully read the above terms and general release and fully understand them. Please initial. I'm aware that this is a release of liability covenant not to sue and indemnify agreement between myself and the church and or its affiliated organizations and or other individuals. And I understand and agree that by placing my signature at the end of this document, I shall be bound by its terms. Please initial. Conclusion. I acknowledge that I have read and fully understand this declaration application, and before voluntarily affixing my signature below, completely understood its context. Should that be context? Yeah, it should be context. And all of the consequences of my agreements and waivers. I am joining staff and becoming a member of a religious order of my own free will, solely to help forward the religious goals and tenets of the Scientology religion and the church, and not for monetary gain, auditing, or training. I have been given the opportunity to consult persons of my choice and to discuss questions regarding this declaration. I understand that by executing this agreement, I am accepting this commitment and making a formal religious vow to serve on staff for the entire period circled above. In accordance with church doctrine, I declare I have not gone past any word in this declaration I have not fully understood. Date and sign. Signature of parent or guardian if a minor. Right there. Okay. That's a lot of bullshit, guys. That's a lot of bullshit. There's more documents that they have to sign that make them even less free. Okay. So this is, again, religious services, enrollment application, agreement, and general release. Okay. You have to put the name of the church there. Very important. I recognize and acknowledge and agree that I am exclusively responsible for my present and future condition in life and for the choices and decisions I make affecting my life. With that in mind, and solely of my own volition, and in the independent exercise of my own free will, I am voluntarily signing and submitting to whichever church hereinafter, the church, this religious services enrollment application, agreement, and general release hereinafter this contract, so that upon acceptance by the church, I may participate in the religious services of the Scientology religion. This is just for people who want to go into those buildings to do Scientology. Okay? This contract is my statement of my personal self-determined desire to participate in religious services of the Scientology religion. By signing this contract, I recognize and acknowledge and agree that Scientology is a religion. The church is a church. The church is a church of the Scientology religion, and all services and activities of the Scientology religion are exclusively religious in nature. The Scientology religion is devoted to the study and handling of the human spirit in relationship to itself, the universes, and other life. The word Scientology comes from the Latin "scio," meaning a knowing in the fullest sense of the word, and the Greek "logos," meaning the study of. I think we went over that once. I don't think it actually means that. Dianetics, spiritual healing technology, is part of the Scientology religion and is the study of the soul, what the soul is doing to the body. The word Dianetics is from the Greek dia, meaning through, and nous, meaning soul. Thus means through soul. Again, I have to talk to some Greeks. Scientology is a religion. The church is a church of Scientology religion, and the services and activities of the Scientology religion are exclusively religious in nature. Like it's like that's like the third time they've said that in this year. The Scientology religion is devoted to the study and handling of we read that already. Sorry. The founder of the Scientology religion is American author and philosopher L. Ron Hubbard, hereinafter LRH, whose writings and recorded spoken words on the subjects of Scientology and Dianetics are a record of his observations and research into the nature of the human spirit and condition. The writings and recorded spoken words of LRH on the subjects of Scientology and Dianetics present a guide intended to assist persons to become more aware of themselves as persons, restoring trust and respect for self and others. They are not a statement of claims by the church, by any other Scientology church or organization, or by LRH. Because, you know, Xenu and all these other things, it's just, that was his observation. The term religious services, as used in this contract, means and refers to the beliefs and practices set forth in writings and spoken words of LRH on the subjects of Dianetics and Scientology. As you can see, you have to sign all this stuff, okay? This is just to go on course. This is just to say, right? I wish to participate in Scientology religious services, and that this choice is an independent exercise of my own free will. I am forever giving up my right to sue the church, its staff, and any of the here and above reference releases for injury or damage suffered in any way connected with Scientology religious services, like all the people that get cancer and die. Okay? So this is what you have to sign before you go into auditing. Okay? Scientology is unilaterally opposed as a matter of religious belief to the practice of psychiatry and espouses as a religion belief that the study of the mind and the healing of the mentally caused ills should not be alienated from religion or condoned in non-religious fields. I am in full agreement with this religious belief. I do not believe in or subscribe to psychiatric labels for individuals. Nobody is depressed. Nobody has ADHD. Nobody has autism. Nobody has any of those things. I do not subscribe to that. They are not real. It is my strongly held religious belief that all mental problems are spiritual in nature. All mental problems are spiritual in nature. That's how we end up with Whitney Mills and Lisa McPherson dying because they were not handled properly. And that there is no such thing as mentally incompetent person. Only those suffering from spiritual upset of one kind or another, dramatized by an individual. They don't believe in the law of non compos mentis. I reject all psychiatric labels and intend for this contract to clearly memorialize my desire to be helped exclusively through religious spiritual means and not through any form of psychiatric treatment, specifically including involuntary commitment based on so-called lack of competence. Under no circumstances at any time do I wish to be denied my right to care for members of my religion to the exclusion of psychiatric care or psychiatric directed care, regardless of what any psychiatrist, medical person, designated member of the state, or a family member may assert supposedly on my behalf. If circumstances should ever arise in which government, medical, or psychiatric officials or personnel or family members or friends attempt to compel or coerce or commit me for psychiatric evaluation, treatment, or hospitalization, I fully desire and fully expect that the church or Scientologists will intercede on my behalf to oppose such efforts, and or extricate me from that predicament, so that my spiritual needs be addressed in accordance with the tenets of the Scientology religion. So all these times that people are like, well, you know, we could just, if we get them the proper help, they are pledging in this contract, and Scientologists will show up with this contract in hand saying, see, they said they don't want any of this ever, no matter what. And we're here to take them back. Your parents, your spouse may be denied legal rights without a good lawyer present. Okay? Because your minor signed this, especially in the case of divorce where one parent's a Scientologist and the other isn't. Okay? The Scientology religion teaches that the spirit can be saved and that the spirit alone may save or heal the body. And that the introspection rundown is intended to save the spirit. The introspection rundown, the one that Lisa McPherson was on, the one that Whitney Mills was on, What happened to those two women? Oh, they're dead. The introspection rundown is specifically the rundown that is used when people have what is termed in the real world and in Scientology a psychotic break. The result of which has only ever been more psychosis or death. If anyone can present to me someone who did the introspection rundown successfully and is now a productive member of society somewhere, I would love to interview them and get their take on this basic death sentence for people. Okay. I understand that introspection rundown is an intensive, rigorous religious service that includes being isolated from all sources of potential spiritual upset, including but not limited to family members, friends, or others with whom I might normally interact. As part of the introspection rundown, I specifically consent to church members being with me 24 hours a day at the direction of my case supervisor. 24-hour watcher consenting to it ahead of time, in case that ever happens. It's so rare that they're making you consent to it to do any service. In accordance with the tenets and customs of the Scientology religion, the case supervisor will determine the time period in which I remain isolated. It could be anything. It could be a week, month, a year, 6 days. You don't know. According to the beliefs and practices of the Scientology religion, I further acknowledge that the duration of any such isolation is uncertain, determined only by my spiritual condition, not your physical, your spiritual condition, but that such duration will be completely at the discretion of the case supervisor. I also specifically consent to the presence of church members around the clock for whatever length of time is necessary to perform the introspection rundown's processes and to achieve the spiritual results of the introspection rundown. I understand, acknowledge, and agree that the introspection rundown addresses only the individual's spiritual needs, and I freely consent without reservation and without condition or limitation to church members conducting the introspection rundown, and that I accept and assume all known and unknown risks of injury, loss, or damage resulting from my decision to participate in the introspection rundown, and specifically absolve all persons and entities from all liabilities of any kind without limitation associated with my participation or their participation in my introspection rundown. Like the people who kept the journals of Lisa McPherson talking about how she refused to, drink her protein shake, and she was wailing and she was becoming so thin and she stunk really bad and they didn't do anything about it. Right. It comes from this pair. I also strongly disagree as a matter of religious principle with the use of psychiatric treatment for anyone, including myself. I reject the uses of psychiatric labels and believe in assisting individuals through religious and spiritual means. Therefore, I'm hereby specifying that should I get into a situation in the future, unlikely as it is, where other members may think that I need psychiatric treatment of any kind, that I instead desire to receive Scientology spiritual assistance, and that it can include, but is not limited to, the introspection rundown. Further, I realize that in the future, it may consequently be suggested by a senior Scientology minister, should the need arise, that I receive such spiritual assistance and gain. And again, I want to make it clear that I, under such circumstances, desire to receive Scientology spiritual assistance, which may include but not be limited to the introspection rundown. So this includes people like myself who have attempted unaliving themselves. Instead of going to a hospital for treatment, or medical assistance, you would receive the introspection rundown. They have one just for the files, the briefcase patrol. Okay? Right? Okay? Everything in Scientology is confidential. The training, the auditing. All my PC folders and other ecclesiastical files containing notations regarding my spiritual progress, as well as the contents thereof, are the sole and exclusive property of the Church of Scientology International. Why did that come about? Laura DiCrescenzo got all of her PC folders or pre-clear folders back from the Church of Scientology. So now they're claiming they are not mine. And I have no legal, ecclesiastical, or other rights whatsoever with respect to them. They are not mine. So things that I say in a session are not mine. Therefore, why should any of it ever be held against you later? Right? They're kept confidential from all persons who aren't supposed to see it. Disclosure of the contents, right? To me or anyone lacking that game would be spiritually damaging to me, not only in this lifetime, but future lifetimes. Accordingly, while I do not believe I have any rights whatsoever in this regard, I nevertheless forever abandon, surrender, waive, and relinquish without any limitation any and all rights of ownership, possession, custody, control, access, copying, and viewing of my PC folder or folders, and all other ecclesiastical files containing any notations regarding my spiritual progress, both with respect to the folder files and themselves for information contained in them. The abandonment, surrender, waiver, and relinquishment to which I refer in the immediate preceding paragraph is unconditional and irrevocable and applies equally to anyone acting or purporting to be acting on my behalf or for my benefit, whether I'm alive or dead, whether I'm disabled or incapacitated, and under any and all circumstances, foreseen or unforeseen, in perpetuity, without exception or limitation. Should I or anyone acting or purporting to be acting on my behalf or for my benefit ever seek access to any of my PC folders or any other ecclesiastical file containing any notations regarding my spiritual progress, I intend for the submission of this contract to the presiding judicial official to be a complete and sufficient basis for the immediate denial of whatever access is being sought with prejudice and to any other further effort to breach the absolute confidentiality of those materials or the exclusive right of Church of Scientology International to preserve their absolute confidentiality. In exchange, and as consideration for the foregoing, the Church of Scientology International agrees to preserve, inviolate, and in perpetuity the confidentiality of my PC folders and all their ecclesiastical files. Then how in good God's name were they presenting all those knowledge reports on the Jane Does during the Masterson trial, I ask you? You can't, they're saying right there, they're going to keep it all confidential. It's never going to come out. So it's a two-way street there. They can't just keep trying to present that shit as evidence when it suits them, okay? And then you have to sign all this after you watch orientation. Remember the first thing you had to watch that before you could become a staff member. The beliefs, teachings, practices, and services of the Scientology religion, God, I can't even get it out of my mouth, guys. It's so disgusting, are exclusively religious in nature and set forth in the writings and spoken words of LRH and the subjects of Dianetics and Scientology published within the identifying S and double triangle of Dianetics and the Dianetics triangle symbol, Illuminati, and all services or applications of the principles of Mr. Hubbard, provided to me by the ministers or staff of the Church of Scientology, churches and organizations, including without limitation auditing, which is Scientology's unique form of religious counseling encompassing all services on the Scientology classification, gradation, and awareness chart, which includes without limitation all levels, rundowns, grades, assists, reviews, repairs, seminars, co-audits, all Scientology congregational services of any description, training, which is the study of the scripture of Scientology religion on the road to achieving spiritual freedom and salvation, includes without limitation all services identified on the Scientology classification, gradation, and awareness chart, all courses, internships, and cramming. The application of Scientology ethics and justice technology, which are both exclusively religious components of the practice of Scientology religion, and the study and the application of the principles contained in the technology of L. Ron Hubbard. Oh, the administrative writings of LRH used within the church and any and all other services or the use of the technology of L. Ron Hubbard without limitation provided to me by the ministers of or staff of the Church of Scientology and all other Scientology churches and organizations. So, in conclusion, you have to agree at the outset, Scientology is a religion. You're waiving your right to pay. You're waiving your right to anything, even intervention from the judicial system to assist you in a way that may help your mental health or your physical health. Because they very cleverly put in there that Scientologists believe that, the spirit alone may save or heal the body, and that all illnesses are spiritual in nature. So if you have cancer, nope, we're going to audit that out. If you have a cold, we're going to audit that out. If you have a broken leg, we're going to audit that out. We are not going to seek any outside help for any of these things. Now, in the case of indentured servitude slavery and the Scientology contract, I truly believe from what I just presented that those people are indentured servants. They are not, because they're getting that pocket money included in that contract, they have violated what that means to be a volunteer. Okay. You cannot provide people, even if you say in writing, it's not going to be a regular amount. But it does, earlier it says they will get weekly pocket money. Right. So any expectation of a specific time in which I will receive some funds, how I'm reading the law, then makes it pay, which is taxable. And of course, they do pay taxes on that pocket money. And therefore makes me an employee per California state law, which would mean that all of those people, despite this insane contract, would be entitled to minimum wage, overtime pay, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So how do we, some protesters say you're worth more than $50 a week. They're probably not even getting paid $50 a week. Okay. We have to find a way to wake up the people that are inside there that have signed this contract, right? Because they are not, per that contract, per those contracts that we just read, they are not free to speak to anyone at any time about anything. Okay. They think that they are supreme beings. They are spiritually above everyone else. And you, as a person telling them, hey, you can leave anytime you want. Come on over. I'll help you out. You are evil. And you are trying to make them violate that covenant. Right? You're trying to make them hurt Scientology in some way, shape, or form. Which is really, really dark and sad and awful, because that's what I believe. That's why I stayed so many times. I believed I was hurting people. I was literally, this is what they tell you when you try to leave. You're going to cause the death of millions of people if you go. Millions of people across the world. Like as if me leaving is an apocalyptic moment for all of society, where there's a plague will be released upon the land. Right? That didn't happen, obviously. But you believe that, right? So in order to crack the nugget of the people that are in there, that's much harder than spreading these things that, are out there already, these documents, and letting people know, when you join the Church of Scientology, you are giving up your constitutional rights to have your family, your friends, okay, your loved ones, anyone come to help you if they feel like you're in danger and take you away from there, or get you other treatment that isn't just Scientology. That is, by definition, I hate to break the news to Scientology, a cult. Okay? Even priests and nuns in the Catholic religion are free to go see a doctor. Okay? Now, I'm sure they are encouraged to pray things away. But if it becomes like that they are mentally unwell, I don't think that they keep them under 24-hour watch I'm pretty sure they would take them to a psychiatric institution. In fact, a lot of psychiatric institutions used to be run by who? The Catholics. So, yeah. But indentured servitude is illegal in California. And most of the Scientology organizations that exist on planet Earth exist in California, throughout the state, but concentrated in the southern portion of California. I don't know what the indentured servitude laws are in Florida in regards to, the Mecca and all of that. But there are more Scientology staff, indentured servants, and more Scientological Space Navy members in the state of California throughout those organizations than anywhere else in the world. And if California still has on the law, on the books, which it does, against indentured servitude, methinks that is the gigantic loophole that should be exploited, especially for people who were former fake Space Navy members. Okay, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for, bearing with me through this new format. I think it's going to work out great. And I will see you all on the Flippity Dippity. Thank you, as always, to my mods for keeping this stream right and tight. Thank you for all of you viewing and the truth that we're constantly trying to bring out here on this channel. Please go see my other videos. Click that link for my link tree, and I'll see you next time on the Flippity Dippity.